Hello and welcome to the Outer World Podcast. I'm your host Nick and I'm here with my co-host Daniel Reel.
Hey guys, good to be here.
And today we have a special guest, Rowan Simmons.
Hiya. Yeah, good to be on.
Cool.
Good to have you, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we've been wanting to have you on for quite a while.
Yeah, you've actually been on a lot of our discussions.
Yeah.
I have noticed that a little bit. Yeah.
So I don't know, just give us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in Flesh and Blood, and kind of what you like about the game.
Yeah. So Flesh and Blood is actually my first ever TCG.
Okay.
I collected Pokemon cards back in like primary school, and that you open Pokemon cards and you like give them to people and stuff.
But like, never played.
Yeah, never.
Yeah.
I'd never played anything.
Does anyone play it?
Pretty controversial.
Yeah, I
aren't
know, right? Right. Starting off on a high note there, Nick. Yeah, so I came into learn to play at Dice Jar, and I think both of you two were there.
Yeah. So I think was it me?
Yeah, it was you. It wasn't me because
I taught you how to
taught
play.
Liam and Josh.
Yeah,
I
that's
didn't
right.
teach because it was
I
you
think
and Bo that came in, right?
It was So I came in with
I
I came in with a friend. We came into Dice Jar looking just for dice, as is implied by the name. But yeah, we came in on the Friday. The learn to play was the Saturday the next day, and we both decided we wouldn't come in alone. So we pulled each other in on the Saturday and sat down to play just with the starter decks. I played on the first day, obviously, the Ira deck, which was all of the craze at the Learn to Play days. I also played a Katsu and a Dorinthia straight out of the deck, and
So
the starter decks, that you can't get anymore, but you could get then.
back in the day.
Back in the good old days. So, yeah, I played a couple of games there. Probably lost horrifically every single one of them, but it just took something over in my mind that made me think that this was something that was a lot of fun and was very similar to a lot of the things that I enjoyed about like Dungeons and Dragons and board games and that sort of thing. So that's what got me coming back.
Yeah. So I guess you've got kind of a somewhat unique perspective down here in that you've never played any other card games.
Yeah.
Yeah,
most people played
most people that are from down here have played some sort of TCG.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Like
Magic.
usually most people that have played Flesh and Blood aren't like brand new to a TCG. They've had some sort of like depth into another TCG.
Yeah, no, I was fully blank slate.
Yeah.
No idea what things were, no idea how TCGs generally worked or anything like that. I had just, it looked interesting. I had fun playing, and friend and I were like, okay, let's get into this. Just start out, see how we go.
Yeah, like I'm just kind of interested. What was there anything in particular that like leaped out at you as that made Flesh and Blood be something that you were interested in and that you wanted to like do as a hobby?
So for me, coming into Flesh and Blood, one of the first things that grabbed me was the art, which was and is absolutely stunning. Like just looking at the cards is honestly such a phenomenal experience. The art and the artists are absolutely top tier. But for me, I'm in other aspects of my gaming life, as much as I have a gaming life. I'm a bit of a min-maxer in general.
Okay.
I'm very much into the PvP type build stuff to go one-on-one and
So was it like the equipment and stuff,
Yeah,
like crafting your own deck?
yeah, it was also just the idea of, going into combat with someone and there definitely being a victor. There's none of that equivocalness of ending conflict another way, which is, a great part of things like Dungeons and Dragons and like games that are more focused on role playing and world building and that sort of thing. But there's something that's really like viscerally exciting about going into a matchup with someone knowing that one of you has to go down.
Yeah, to me, Flesh and Blood really captures that idea of like a war, like a battle between two people.
Yeah.
You start with all your resources, everything up, and you're like locked in this attrition war where you try and break down your opponent's defenses. And I think it kind of more than any other game really gets that across.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, what I think really sells that is how interactive you have to be with your opponent.
Yeah, because that was the other thing, right? Is that for me, before I came into Flesh and Blood, like trying to figure out card games was a very intimidating thing, just because obviously games like Magic, games like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh, those sorts of things are very well established. There is years and years and years of meta and releases and everything to try.
And that's the really good thing about Flesh and Blood is when you did start, like the game
it was
only,
Wraith and nothing else.
It was still very fresh, which means everyone else was creating the experience.
No,
No.
not at that point. Not at the point that I started. It was just Wraith.
Wait,
I think.
no, Arcane.
Was Arcane out?
Yeah, because it was post-COVID.
Yeah,
So
post-COVID,
Arcane
yeah.
was.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, but I can kind of see what you're saying. Like, with Magic, or I mean, especially with Yu-Gi-Oh, there are like a million different deck choices.
Yeah.
But with Flesh and Blood back then, and still now, it's like, do you want to be a rogue? Do you want to be a warrior? Do you want to be a ninja? Like, it's still like...
Yeah, even now with more heroes, you can still know exactly what each hero is and how they do things. I think that's, for me, one of my favourite things about having a young and old hero is that there's that consistency tracing through, which for me is really helpful. It's hard to keep track of so much stuff all at once, so recognising names and faces over and over again is...
Yeah.
Do you remember your experiences with the first few armories that you had?
Oh, yep. So the first few armories that I came to, it was really good. I remember facing off against first armory, my first game, against one of the long-standing Flesh and Blood people in Dunedin, which was Kenny Forrester.
I have something to add to this.
Yeah. So I remember playing my first game with Kenny and him just like absolutely decimating me. Like there was no two ways about it. It was like 3 turns or something like that, and that was just him warming up.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely gone.
That it is one of the things about the game when you start is that the skill gap between someone that is new and someone that has played for a while
It's quite exponential.
is really large, and it can feel quite difficult to understand why you're losing.
So I don't know if you remember how this game ends. Like, so you lose, of course.
Badly.
Do you remember what happened like in the first few seconds after?
I remember him turning around and you saying...
He turned around, got off the chair, walked away, came over to us. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no. Go back over there and start talking. And he's like, oh, no, I'm good. I don't want to. And I went, I was like, honestly, I don't care what you want. Like, if you don't go talk to her and tell her what happened or show her what happened, explain to her what happened or anything, she's just going to turn away from this game. Like,
that's what I remember you saying is if you guys and... if the environment wasn't welcoming, that I just wouldn't come back.
Yeah,
and
that's what for any player. Like, I find like if I ever play against someone new, I want to talk to them after the game. I want to explain where they went wrong. I want to show them things, because if you don't, then it just breeds like I'm not good. I don't understand. I can't pick this game up.
It's like
I don't want to invest in this game.
Yeah,
you know?
That's one of the things, right? Like if you get matched up against someone that's new, it is a free win for you, right?
Yeah,
because I mean, if you know the game, you know the systems, and they don't, you're at a massive advantage. Yeah. But I think it should be your responsibility, you know, if you want to see the game succeed, to try and help them, you know, increase their skills and feel like they can improve and eventually reach where you are.
Yeah. Because that's the thing that I remember most, right? That's really what kept me coming back, was the fact that game after game that I was absolutely getting my butt handed to me was every time I did, whoever I was facing up, if they were more experienced than me, which was pretty much everyone at that point, was giving me pointers, like walking me through where I'd messed up or where I could improve or why they did that thing rather than this thing. Which as a new player coming through, not just into Flesh and Blood, but also just into TCGs. That was something I was really nervous about, coming into a space that is really dominated by men as, you know, someone who does not look like someone who would play TCGs. I fully accept that about myself. But that was one thing I was really anxious about coming through, and that's the really important thing about the Flesh and Blood community that I've experienced, is that by and large everyone is wanting to share the game and enjoy the game and welcome in new people, which is absolutely phenomenal for me. Like, it makes all the difference.
So this was like one of my core values of like when the Dunedin scene really started up, is I wanted to push for welcoming new players like heavily like that. Like, it just drives the community so much more ahead. Like, let's say Kenny didn't say anything to you and we went away, and you did come back and play again and again and again. You don't advance. Like, slowly you advance, but you don't. The talking makes you advance so much more. The more you advance, the more we advance. The more like, you know, we bring each other up rather than.
Yeah.
I mean, like, learning how to play Flesh and Blood or any TCG really is like riding a bike. You gotta go through the gauntlet. You know.
Yeah.
You're gonna fail time and time again, and I mean, I was lucky because I was one of the first few people that picked up in the area. I already had played TCGs for much of my life as when I was a young child, so I could take to it, and I had that knowledge already. But for someone that doesn't, it's hard to learn initially where you're falling off the bike, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and because you said running the gauntlet, and that was pretty much my experience. Was for months, every game I played, I was losing, and often losing really, really badly. Like, I don't even know how many months I went without winning one game at Armory. Like, it was really, it could have been really disheartening to keep coming back and losing and feel like you're not improving. But with the encouragement from the people who were playing locally and who were better than me, I did actually start to see, even though I was losing, I did start to, you start to see turns where I once would have made this mistake or that mistake. You start seeing how you can pick it up, and that's really important.
I think one of the main things people realise is they start to play the game with a plan. Whether, like, initially it's like just understanding what the cards do.
Yeah.
Eventually they put the pieces together and go, well, if I play this card together with this card, and even if they don't win the game, they're like, well, I made a really good plan or a really good turn here, and that made the game closer. If I continue to learn like that. But, yeah. Of course, you're through the gauntlet now.
Yeah,
and now
massive kudos. You've come from someone with no experience to being probably one of the better players in Dunedin. Like, in all honesty, top 5.
I would have a very difficult time picking, like, if I had to start from scratch, I didn't know anything about TCGs, I'd find Flesh and Blood incredibly intimidating and grueling to start learning to play. And I think it is a major strength of the community that lots of people recognise this. But so obviously you've run through the gauntlet, and now you're trying to, I think you've kind of joined us and many other members of the community trying to help other new players. So kind of what does it seem like to be kind of at the other end?
It feels weird just because, I went from probably less than a year ago, really, just over a year ago, losing every game I was playing, to coming through and top 8ing in a handful of events, and then coming top 4 in the recent Dunedin skirmish. And still, like, it feels, you catch yourself at normal armories making really good plays and then making these really beginner mistakes. And that's the thing, right, is that with TCGs and with especially Flesh and Blood always growing and developing, you're never going to be an expert. So that's something that I'm trying to bring to those newer players as well, is that mistakes don't...
They're a growing part of the game.
Exactly.
Every mistake you make is a lesson to make you better.
You can't become better without making those mistakes, right? And that's the thing that I feel like that's something that I struggled with when I was starting, was sometimes you make the same mistake over and over and over again, but every time you do it reinforces the way that you could make that mistake better. It's that saying, try again, fail better.
Exactly,
that's really the whole, that's really been my experience with Flesh and Blood. And that's how I'm trying to bring up those newer players now as well.
Yeah, and I think it's something kind of unique to card games, like in relation to like making mistakes, is like, say you play chess, right? The rules are very, this is how the game works. This move in this situation is always a mistake. But with a card game, because new sets are coming out, people, even without new sets, people start playing the game differently with different decks. The mistakes over time change, and there are new mistakes that can be made where there weren't before, right? So,
plays that might have been like the best optimal play are now a mistake, you know?
yeah, exactly, right?
Well, and the other way around, like when I started actually building decks and going through and not just playing with the starter deck, but changing stuff out with stuff I'd opened, things people had given me.
Yeah.
I remember running Red Overpower.
Yeah.
And being told by Dan, being
I
told
said
by
in-
Kenny,
I
Liam.
said in no uncertain terms, something along the lines of, don't play Red Overpower.
Yep.
Play something.
Play anything but Red Overpower.
Yeah, because,
Yeah.
well, at the time, I think I was correct. Because
Oh, yeah.
I think at
that
the
was
time,
that was
more
the main
go wide
that
was,
yeah,
was,
exactly, right.
was more important in a build,
That-
which means
that
you
was
didn't
just-
have the resource, right?
At the time, the way the game was played, Warrior was much more about stacking the cheap cards. You wanted lots of red cards and not many blues. But now Warrior's kind of shifted, and Red Overpower is a fan favorite now. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, because I remember playing that at Dunedin Armories, and absolutely people knew that I was running Red Overpower. But you take that out of Dunedin, where the meta hasn't accounted for that necessarily, the way that small
Yeah.
play groups do and stuff like that. You take that to bigger national events or anything like that, like the Calling, and suddenly Red Overpower means a lot more with people
Yeah.
who don't play around it all the time.
Yeah.
So that was one of my favourite
it's
changes
your-
that's come around.
Red Overpower is like kind of one of your pet cards, right?
Yeah.
You
Oh
put it-
yeah.
like,
Every deck I build for
like a red-
Dorinthia has at least one Red Overpower.
Yeah, I gotta, like, on one hand, you're mad. On the other hand, I really respect it. Like, cause
I was dedicated to making it work. It didn't matter if it failed 90% of the time. The
Yeah.
10% felt real good.
yeah, I mean, like, for me, my pet card is Potion of Strength. And usually I chuck it places where it shouldn't be. And then I end up taking it out because it's not good.
Yeah.
But every now and then you find a place where it is good, you know, like when we found its place in Ira, you know, it was, you know, so I think it is good to have some cards you really like and, you know, experiment with.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you find something that other people have missed.
Yeah.
You know, and you were light years ahead. Everyone,
Yeah,
you know,
there we go.
thought you
I
were
was
wrong.
ahead of the meta.
You were ahead of the
heard it
meta.
here first.
You knew well ahead of time.
Yeah.
Red Overpower is a real card.
Yeah, no, so that was, you know, one of the things that really did stick with me was the fact that, you know, you do have to adjust decks as you go. I think for a long time I was really trying to force through one particular way of doing it just because that was, you know, what I was seeing was doing well, what other people were saying was doing well, but I can't look at deck lists. I really struggle to just copy a deck list
Yeah.
and go off of that. So for me, I have to put together a deck from scratch and really look at how I want to play the game.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing for me. That's why Red Overpower is in there. That's why, you know, this card isn't in there or that card is, that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm building out my deck to play the game I want to play.
Yeah.
And if it happens to be successful, that's great.
Yeah.
But for me, it's the fun of playing the game that keeps me coming back.
Yeah. Cool. Like,
So yeah, I talked to Dan about this like a couple
Yeah,
weeks back. I said like at some point you've gone from a casual player, like an actual casual player, to a competitive player, and I haven't noticed the change like until like it's well and truly like you are well and truly a competitive player down here. There's no denying it. Like it is fundamental. You can't even say you're not a competitive player. You are. Like I'm sorry, but at some point something like has clicked in your head and changed for you how you play, and you've made that mind change. Like, is there anything like?
I want to say, like, is there anything that like
That
flicked a
defines it?
switch
Yeah.
where it was like because to us the way we saw it was you'd play well, but you usually come like 2-2 in an armory, and then suddenly one week I'm like playing you in the finals, playing you in the finals, playing you in the finals, playing you in the quarterfinals, like week after week, and I was like, crap, I'm losing some of the time, you know, which you know, Nick and I, we usually end up losing to each other, and Liam is kind of the common situation.
Yeah.
So was there anything that kind of like clicked that, you know, that helps you like win more, I guess?
I think for me, the thing that helped me win more was that I stopped playing other people's games and started playing mine.
Okay.
That was the biggest shift for me, was that when I was learning to play and when I was starting out, you know, coming into that like 2-2 space, I was really formulating my strategy around
what they were doing?
my opponent.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, he's being
So
aggressive, I'll be defensive.
Yeah, so I was really formulating my game plan based on how they came into it.
So you're being quite reactive.
Yeah.
You know, being like,
Yeah.
I guess like maybe like overusing your shunts and stuff.
Yeah. So the change for me, I think, really came in when I decided that I was going to start playing the game my way, which in some ways meant becoming more aggressive in terms of building out a more aggressive deck, but also in terms of forcing people to make moves that they wouldn't necessarily like to make.
Yeah.
So on a hand, so I'm a Dorinthia main, she's my girl, but
we'll get to it.
but like on a hand where I can't actually do that much, it's forcing them to think that I can do more than I am able to do.
Just to clarify, kind of like, how would you classify like your style of play? Like, you've said that a couple times that it's to be aggressive, to be proactive, but how do you do that? Like, what is the game plan?
So for me, I think this is one of the good things about coming into it as a Dorinthia player, is that you really learn the benefit of playing the mind game with your opponent, because anyone who knows Dorinthia knows that it's all about what could be added on top. It's never really about what comes first for 90% of the time. So learning to play that mind game and make people think.
Often what's in your opponent's head is way scarier than whatever is in your hand.
Exactly.
You know?
So that was really the way that I started thinking about my games and about my matches and about the way I wanted to play, was that I wanted to force people to think more than I was thinking.
Yeah,
really.
Definitely. And that's a totally valid strategy. You know, if your opponent's working harder than you are, then you have a good shot at winning, right?
Yeah.
You know, you want to keep your opponent guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I guess this leads onto Dorinthia.
Yeah.
You are a Dorinthia main, and you
she's
are
my girl.
unapologetic. You
Yeah.
do not, outside of Blitz, I think you've only played Dorinthia in Classic Constructed.
I don't know if I think I built a Rhinar deck that I ran for a little bit, just because I'd played Dorinthia for so long that I was getting a little bit burned out doing it, just because it felt like the deck hadn't really changed. Even though I was moving stuff around, it just felt like I was doing exactly the same thing that a million other people were doing, and that it was starting to become less enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I traded it out. I thought, what is a deck that sounds stupid fun? And I built a KO for Blitz, which went about as well as anyone would expect a KO to go. So, you know. Ups and downs, mostly downs. And I thought,
3?
and then I thought, this is kind of fun. I'm kind of liking this. So I talked to a couple of people. I talked to Dan. I talked to Liam, who is obviously
playing a lot of Brute at the time.
Yeah, who was absolutely like the brute Jesus in Dunedin. So I just put together a really shitty brute deck with the cards that I had at home, which was like one majestic, I think it was like a massacre or something like that, like mostly commons, barely like 2 copies of each card type thing. And I brought it in and I got my ass handed to me, and Liam pulled it out of my hands and he looked at it and he said, nothing was what he did. But yeah, I took it apart, traded for some cards, put in some new stuff, and played that for a little bit.
Yeah.
And that really helped reset me coming into like skirmish season Blitz Dorinthia, which I pulled apart, entirely changed around, and had a phenomenal time playing for a long time. And that's the deck list that ultimately ended up top 8ing for skirmish in Dunedin. Top 4ing, I think I ended up. And then been back to my girl ever since. So, yeah.
Brute is an interesting class, because I if a new player asks me what they want to play, the first thing I say is just pick one that looks interesting to you. But
Yep.
if they want to know what one's easy to play, what one should I start with, the one furthest down the line for me to suggest is Brute.
Yep.
Because the deck, it looks like a big dumb deck where you just hit them, but the interactions are very complicated.
Yeah.
And the deck is very reliant on its expensive cards.
Well, that's what I
That's the
found
other
as well,
thing.
was that for me, Rhinar especially is worlds away from Dorinthia. With Dorinthia,
Yeah.
I want my whole hand every turn. I want to be pressuring damage and threatening damage every turn,
Yeah.
whereas Brute is block with 2 or 3 cards, come in for club, save up for those 1 or 2 huge turns,
Yeah.
which I think
And
really
it's-
helped
And
with the reset.
It's even, like, Brute has even gone to be even more extreme now
Yeah.
with the clause builds, where it's just saying, all right, you can play the majority of the game by yourself, I'll just block, and then I'll get my big hand, and then
Yeah.
and just come in with the
Restart, stoppy.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right? Like, it's a combo deck that tries to hit you twice for a large amount, and then the rest is just stall.
Yeah.
Where the warrior is like, the pressure, the onus is on you, I'm going to hit you very hard every turn.
Yeah, it's your decision how much you're taking. Like that's the thing that really drew me to Warrior in a lot of ways is,
Yeah.
like I said at the start, I love that PvP, like cage match type thing.
Yeah.
And Warrior really hits all of those buttons.
Warrior's the vice, you know?
Yeah.
She grabs you and goes,
Yeah.
and squeezes, right?
Yeah. So that's what keeps bringing me back, is new and interesting and fun ways to force people to overthink their game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. People who play, who don't normally play Warrior have always said to me, it always seems like you have to think so much.
Yeah.
But for me, Warrior has just become this phenomenal mindless game of, is it going to be 9 or is it going to be 12? How
Yeah,
many
yeah.
times am I hitting you?
'Cause, yeah, when we do tend to lose to you, it's to the red overpower. It's to the big attacks that we can't really do anything about, or that we can't play around in that specific moment, and they just come through, and it's over, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Warrior just does such a great job, but it's very different to the way I played Warrior in the past, where when I was playing Warrior a lot, and for a long time I was known for my Warrior play, was I would play it more like a mid-range deck, where I would play with my opponent and I would play to my Tunic Shunts and basically just play for value. I would try and get value from the mind games like you do, but the idea was just to put myself in a position late game where my opponent would just be crushed, so it was more like a garbage compactor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once you're in deep, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember trying to get some advice from you when I was starting off
Right.
playing, and I was
Yeah.
saying, why is it that as my game goes on, it's just becomes their game?
Yeah.
And it was just because at the time, the deck I was trying to play, the way that I was playing it was just that I was giving away all of my threats without saving
Yeah.
anything for later. So that was a number one tip that I got, was if you give away all your threats at the start, you've got nothing to finish the game with.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Which has completely flipped now, and that now my deck is very aggressive.
But you still have those threats to save away, right?
Yeah, it's all
you
about
still got the
cycling.
overpowers, the routes for the end game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it. Moving on.
Yeah.
Are you going to be attending nationals this year, or are you hoping to attend nationals this year?
I am hoping to attend nationals. I unfortunately didn't get to go for 2020. # student life.
Yeah.
Did you register? Were you one of the players that registered?
yeah.
No, I did not register. I was not that
There was
guy.
a couple of Dunedin players that registered
there
that
were.
did not show up.
Yep, so there were some buys going around for Dunedin. I did qualify for nationals, but at the time that everything was going on, it was just coming up to an unfortunate collision of everything
Yeah.
for me, so I wasn't able to make it, but that's absolutely a goal of mine this year, is to go, because for me, big events like that, obviously I want to go and I want to do well and I want to, make my mark and all of that sort of thing. But for me, the best part about tournaments like that is the learning experience, getting to see how people build outside of Dunedin, how people play outside of Dunedin, and just the way that our meta goes up against the meta from Nelson or Wellington or Auckland, and how it stacks up and is different in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like I always try and encourage people to go to these events as a learning experience. Like, hey, you probably won't win.
Yeah.
You know, if you're newer to the game, then a lot of people have a lot of experience on you. They might have a better deck. But hey, even so, go. You know, you'll learn a lot. You'll meet some really cool new people, and you'll probably have a blast. You know.
Yeah.
Well, worst comes to worst, you get to play at least a day's worth of your favourite game, really. For me, at least. Like, I get to go and have a full day just having an absolute blast playing, for me, the best TCG in the world.
Yeah.
And getting to share that with other people.
Yeah.
And so far, it hasn't been in our city, so even if you don't make it to day 2, you can go do other things in the city because it's not,
exactly.
not in your city.
You know? So, yeah, no, Nationals is 100% at the top of my list.
So that said, are you planning on attending any Rotonets, and how are you prepping for them?
Oh, so I am definitely attending the Dunedin Road to Nationals.
Yeah, I'd be a bit concerned if you were.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, Greg. I would like to cancel my ticket.
Refund now.
So far, I'm also planning on attending Christchurch.
Cool.
Just because South Island can drive up and all of that sort of thing.
They're the closest, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to be thinking about Nelson, depending on how university lines up for me, just because unfortunately university waits for no TCG.
Hopefully it makes an official announcement sooner rather than later.
That's the thing, is
and puts the ticket sales up so we can get onto that.
Yep, exactly. And then my prep, my prep is generally very different to you guys who have your phenomenal like testing and stuff like that, where you guys get together and you play a lot.
I'm pretty downside right now.
Yeah.
It's a bit tired at the moment.
Yeah, but for me, my playtesting is the Armory events, just because I've got to sleep at some point. But yeah, my playtesting is probably for me just going to be coming into Armories, changing stuff around. Knowing me, I'll come in with a couple of really stupid decks just to have fun 1 week, take some of the load off and try stuff out, and then come back the next week with a serious deck and have it be demonstrated how bad that deck is, but improving off of that. So
yeah, I mean, I also use Armory as like a testing ground, because you get to play against a variety of decks that, you know, they might not be what we've come up as the most optimal decks. Yeah. So it's kind of like a wider field of play.
Yeah.
And, you know, usually after a couple games at an Armory, you can work out if your deck is terrible or not.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, so in our core 4-man group, I'd say, most of us, aside from Callum only plays Ninja, most of us try and play a different hero going into the Armories.
Yeah.
A deck that we think has a shot at being there, and we try to give it a shot, and if we can get for the Armory, then we work from there.
Usually one of us will play like the meta deck, like the current best deck. Callum will play Agrikatsu of some variant.
And there's no other variant.
Yeah, no, Callum will
Nick
bring
and I are
Agrikatsu.
more of a wild card. We'll play whatever.
Yeah, we'll play whatever we're feeling on the day, really. That's in the ratio of being the top 3 or top 5 best decks for what we think is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Test things out.
Sometimes I'll do a bit of cheeky meta shaping. Like if everyone's playing aggro, I'll be like, we'll play Bravo.
Yeah.
And crush some skulls. But yeah.
But that said, going into the Road to Nats, our playtesting time is going to be upped. There'll be a few messages going probably about that in the next day or two for us.
Yeah, I expect to see us playing a lot more.
Saturdays are probably going to be very busy for us over the next coming weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, something that I'm going to find very interesting about the Road to Nationals is how the proliferation of online events really changes the way that gaining an invite to Nationals comes out, just because of the people who can make those online events racking up XP, whereas people who only come to those online, like physical Armories, have more of a challenge in some way. So I think that's going to be interesting seeing how LSS handles that. That's going to be an interesting point for me.
I think if you're active enough to turn up to one Armory per week, you'll make in the top 100 of players in New Zealand.
We'll just have to see
to get
how big
invite,
venue
right?
is. But I think the plan for most people that are really serious about going is, like, I think the way to give yourself the best shot is to practice really hard and try to top 8 a road to nats.
Yeah.
I think that's
Well,
Just
top
attending a road to
four
nats,
now.
top 4.
Top 4 now. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
No, there
road
is.
to nats. Is it top 8 or top 4?
It's top 4.
Yeah, it's top 4 is
It's a top
guaranteed
4,
an invitation.
It's top 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just it sounds hard, and it is.
Yeah.
But if you're
But the XP
that's
for
the best way to
event
go,
is
right?
still, I think, is still a
It's-
6-time modifier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
road to
Yeah, it
nats.
will be.
Which is like the more you attend, the more like you get in.
Yeah.
Like even you win 1 or 2 rounds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
12 XP compared to a normal armory
Yeah.
where you're only getting like 6 XP for
Yeah.
4 or 5 rounds.
I think
you know?
in New Zealand it's a smaller issue because most of our events are in person based, but like in the US, say, if most of the events happening are online and you don't have
The time to do
the
more than
time
one
or the equipment to play online, then I think the best way that you can try and get to nats is to make sure you can travel to try and travel to skirmishes to get that 6x multiplier and to travel to your road to nationals.
Yeah.
Just if you want to get to nationals, just play as much as possible, and
Yeah.
we got to go last year, so hopefully we get to go again.
Yeah.
But it is no given.
So yeah, that's a good way to prep. It's like our main core group will get hunkered down and we'll smash out decks and we'll test them against certain lists. Like the recent charity
Chain.
event that finished.
Yeah.
Kudos, 50 grand the raise for
For
Cancer
the Cancer
Society.
Society in New Zealand.
But along with
which
that
is-
came out 8 top lists that are, they're probably not the best decks in the format, or not necessarily.
well,
Not saying
yeah,
they're not
we
the best.
don't know.
They're not. But they
So
are a good start
it's-
to test
yeah,
against, right?
it's
They're
early
really,
days,
really
right?
good starts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So first place went to Kira.
Yeah.
So fucking well done.
Mr.
So
Classic.
he's playing
Yeah.
Ninja with Belittles, which is like a deck that a couple of people like down here have actually been playing. So that's really cool to see that.
Yeah.
I even have Belittle in my Bolton deck because that card is sweet. And then second place was Warrior.
Yeah.
So Ninja, Warrior, Chain, and Bravo were the decks in the top 8. So that's kind of, I don't know what you're expecting, but that's kind of what we were expecting.
Yeah,
Sort
that
of-
was pretty much what I think we've come to expect, at least since Monarch releasing, is Chain obviously coming through in a
Yeah.
big way for being such a new hero. And then obviously, as we know from Skirmish and Calling and that sort of thing, Ninja, Warrior, always pretty solid options. And then it's always good to see Bravo. I feel like we down in
I think-
Dunedin
I
don't
think
see him a lot.
3 of the
so
4 top
Like-
decks were
Yeah.
WTR.
I
Yeah.
think Bravo top 8ing, like Kale McGrath top 8ing is like a sign of, like, if he's not top 8ing consistently, then Bravo is probably in a really bad place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's such a master of that class.
The problem is also with him being the only Bravo to top 8 and him with so much knowledge of Bravo underneath his belt over everyone else.
Yeah.
It can just be a skill thing and not actually a hero thing.
It could
Right.
be true,
So it could be like false interpretation of actually how the metas go. I'm not saying Bravo's bad, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
anything bad against any of the top 8 players in that thing. But it could be just a show of skill,
Yeah.
right?
It is
The man
early.
has an insane amount of skill under
Yeah.
Bravo.
It is early days, right?
Yeah. But I think seeing
Like say for example, I was quite surprised by Warrior doing so well.
yeah.
I thought Warrior was going to really struggle against Chain and Prism.
In all honesty, our pre-earlier predictions were Prism in, Warrior out.
Yeah.
And 2
But-
Warriors in
Well,
Prism.
I mean, yeah. Every time that we predict the Warrior is a dead class, it's never dead and is top 2.
yeah.
So
yeah, no, she's one
we're
of the
probably
most
just
competitive
robbing him.
classes for a reason.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
But Chain being in there,
that was a
pretty,
given.
yeah.
And Ninja's going to be a
Always
great
gonna be
class.
good, yeah.
It's so Ninja's so malleable. Take it in every direction, and it does well. So
Yeah.
So punishing for a single mistake as well.
yeah,
So-
aggro mid range control.
yeah,
But-
that's one of my least favorite things about going up against a ninja is that for me, it might take a turn or two to get through a decent amount of damage. But if a ninja has a big blowout turn,
yeah.
that's game over
Yeah.
immediately.
You just got to predict the big blowout turn, give
Try
up your
and
hand for that big
prepare for
blowout
it,
turn,
yeah.
or your fridge for that big blowout turn,
Yeah,
and then you've got to
Yeah.
wait for your turn because in the Dory versus Ninja matchup, not saying Dory wins it all the time, but
Dur-
those
Dorinthia-
block twos
Dorinthia is favoured because her attacks are like just naturally hit breakpoints really efficiently
Yeah.
for Ninja.
Yeah.
But you can. It's definitely a losable matchup.
Oh, yeah.
Because the
It's
Ninja player
proven,
can get
yeah.
really good cards, can draw really good cards, and can also have like really big turns, and it's also easy to make mistakes against them. So I think
Yeah.
for the Ninja matchup, you have to be really.
You have to be
A lot
on
of-
all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to your armor.
Yeah.
You know, how and when you choose to use your armor is kind of like the deciding factor a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, something I'm still struggling with for anyone watching
I think
is
everyone does.
Yeah.
you
Everyone
know?
does, yeah.
yeah, armor
know-
is one of the it would be seemingly one of the most simple aspects of the game. It's just cards that sit there until you use them, but trying to figure out when and where to use armor is
Yeah.
it's a growing pain for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, armor is like, it's like chocolate sitting there, you know? You want it, you want to eat the chocolate, use it so that you can have your big turn or whatever, right?
Yep.
It's always tempting you. You go, oh, well, I could only block with one card in this, you know? It's always tempting you to use your armor and to give it up so you can have your big turns.
Yeah.
And you have to learn, and it's so difficult when to use it. You
When
know?
is the right time and when is the wrong time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. When you're being too greedy, you know? And it's so hard to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Sometimes you don't know until you play it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and most times, like, you get it wrong, but you do get it right.
When you get it right, armor is the thing that can win you the game, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I think armor is one of the best designed aspects of Flesh and Blood.
Yeah.
Just the way it works, how it's distributed between the classes, just adds so much to how the play works, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it just influences the game so much, is how your armor works.
Yeah. Well, that's what's helped me really push forward a super aggressive warrior is just the fact
Just have
that
10 armor.
yeah. Yeah, in an ideal situation, I've got what is I lovingly call, what is hatefully called by some people, you can just fridge people
Yeah.
immediately. You just chuck 4 pieces of equipment in front of any attack that someone is throwing at you, and it is
Yeah.
fucking hard to get over.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Ice, baby.
Yeah. And that's, that really does allow me as a more aggressive player to hold on to cards when I probably could have let them go. But if I've got that one turn coming up, I look at the fridge to the side and you just
Yeah,
chuck that in front of it and the
it's always
problem goes
there.
away.
Yeah, yeah.
You know? Yeah.
In the top 8,
The
3
CNC be gone.
Yeah.
in the top 8, 3 of those heroes have a fridge.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, don't even
The
talk to me
the
about
only-
Carrion Husk.
Yeah. The only hero that doesn't have a fridge in that is Ninja.
Is Ninja.
Yeah.
And Ninja won
Which
it.
speaks to, the power of the ninja, really,
Yeah.
that everything breaks, nothing blocks, and still Ninja comes out on
Yeah.
top super
Just
consistently.
so aggressive, so wide,
Yeah.
and a single punish on a breakpoint is everything.
I think, like, Ninja has the best cards in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
Mask
yeah.
of Momentum, like, League Tap.
Flick
It just
Flack.
has... Yeah, Flick Flack is a big one. Ninja just has some of the most ridiculous cards in the game, just in terms of raw power level, raw stats, how they interact with each other, you know? Rising Knee Thrust is 0 resource for 5 attack off a League Tap, like... you know? And, I mean, they pay for it by having terrible equipment. Well,
And terrible
in,
blocks.
in, in
but-
terms of blocking power, right? But they can still get there, which
Yeah.
I think is so cool that the armor is reflected by how the class plays.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool.
So going into that, testing. If you want to test, get some of the lists together and get your friends to play them against your own lists.
Yeah.
If you want to take your list to the next level, because these are a good testing point.
Yeah. So when starting to test, I mean, a lot of the US players are going to start testing, right? More seriously now. Take some of these lists, build them up, work out which ones you think are the best. You know, don't take them for the results for granted that
Yeah.
Ninja is the best deck.
Play out
Test
the
them
matches, feel what you
work
feel.
out what you think is the best deck, and then try and find ways to beat that deck, and then
Yeah.
try and find ways to beat those. And
Yeah.
then eventually you'll find out with an array of decks, and then you just check how often they win against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And an important thing to remember as well when you're building out and testing lists is that even a top deck list is not always going to mesh with the way you want to play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can always mess around with deck lists and play and make sure that they fit you.
Yeah.
And it also
yeah.
also might not fit into your area's meta as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
could be playing, an aggro deck into a control format, or a
Yeah.
mid-range deck into a control area, and then just
Yeah, I think, like talking about like control and mid-range and aggro, I think it's important to find out what kind of player you are and you kind of gravitate towards. So to find, if you're like me, kind of a more mid-rangey, control-y kind of player, then, find someone that likes aggro to play against, That's why Callum is our aggro player, When we come up with an idea, we run it through him, and he'll smash it to bits with Ninja until we put in the right cards, So I think it's important to have, these kind of almost like institutions in your test group.
Yeah, because when you play, when you build a deck into that control field, like you say, to beat control, and you go into a super aggressive meta at, for example, an American skirmish or a calling event, then you get completely blown out unless you're going into it knowing what your deck can do against that field.
Yeah.
I mean, like in New Zealand, control is really, really popular. Bravo, Dash, control. And I'm guessing there's going to be new flavors of it coming up. But now the meta is kind of shifting into an aggro meta.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really interesting to see how some of the top players react to that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we move on to card of the week?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's go.
Sweet as.
Yeah.
So the card of the week today is a classic from the original Wraith set. Sigil of Solace.
You two have a lot of opinions about this card.
I have a few.
Yeah.
It's a 0-cost red card, because we're talking about the red card.
Yeah.
It gains you 3 life, it cannot block or defend, and cannot attack, it's an instant.
Yeah.
So, when I first saw this card, back from my Magic days, there's a card in Magic called Healing Salve. It's a white card, costs nothing to play, and it gains you 3 life. And the card is trash. Terrible. It was in one of the original sets, and it's heralded as being like one of the worst cards from original Magic. So I saw it, and I'm like, well, it's obviously bad too, right? Yeah, exactly, right? We're like, why would I play this in my deck? It doesn't block, doesn't attack.
Yep.
It gains you the same health you would get from blocking from a normal card.
Yep.
So, I guess you can explain it to us, Ron. What is good about Sigil?
Yeah, so I personally, generally, love Sigil. It has been in my deck for as long as I can remember, the red one. Found out very quickly that the yellow and blue, for me, are not worth the cardboard that they are printed on. But
That's a good thing to know.
yeah, but coming into it as Dorinthia, being able to go into matches knowing that my life is 6 or 9 above what my opponent has gotten me to is very reassuring, just to have that balance point.
So, like a safety net.
Exactly. And it's a safety net that doesn't require me to sacrifice in play at least a turn that could be used to benefit, like a card that could be used to benefit me. Obviously, having it in the deck does require sacrificing a slot that could be used for something more aggressive. And this was seen on my skirmish match against Jesse on Wizard.
I think Sigil has like unique application against Wizard.
It really does. Sigil has won me more games against Wizard than I can count.
Yeah.
It is, for me, no holds barred, the most essential card going into a Wizard matchup as a warrior.
A wizard sees an Arsenal card oppose them, and they go, it has to be a Sigil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way it's not.
Yeah, for me,
right?
the second I see a Sigil, it goes into Arsenal with Wizard, and it doesn't come out until they try and kill me.
Sigil's like reverse Razor.
Yeah.
The only time it comes out is if I see another Sigil in hand, and I'm ending my turn, and I'm looking at putting that Sigil into Arsenal, and then I go,
Yeah.
well, that one can come out, and this one can go in. And then they go, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, with you being a warrior main, like, Sigil has like another purpose, and it can be an aggressive card.
Yeah.
It might as well be a +3 to your opponent a lot of the time.
Exactly.
If they're in that headspace,
Yeah.
So,
And that was one of the hardest things for me to learn playing Sigil. Was I used to play Sigil like as soon as I got it. If I was low life,
instant,
I would
right?
play Sigil immediately
Yeah.
and go up. And that was one of the hardest things to learn, was that the card is more valuable when it's not being played.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
when it is
exactly
held
right.
in hand or when it goes into arsenal, at least until you end your turn. If you've got something else you want in your arsenal, fine, you know, whatever. But if you don't, sigil goes in there and it threatens
and it just sits
until
there
it comes out.
And you play your command, you prioritize playing your command and conquer against me because I'm an arsenal card. Oh, I'm just going to sigil.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, water under the bridge, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly.
And it's just so great to have those turns, you know.
Yeah.
You know, they're hoping to pin you with a defense reaction in Arsenal. Well, surprise.
So it doesn't make it into every deck, but it is a very good card, very versatile, and can go into every deck.
Yeah.
And-
It's not.
Yeah, I just want to say that Sigil's an interesting card in that it's, like in my opinion, its role has changed. Where Sigil used to be in a lot of decks. Like you'd play it in Ninja, you'd play it in Warrior, you'd play it in Bravo, you'd fit it into your Dash decks as well. You play it in pretty much everything, right? Unless your deck really didn't want it. Because it was kind of a filler card.
Yeah.
You know? You didn't have anything else that screamed out, I want to put it in. So you put Sigil in there. Now, kind of similar to E-Strike as well, actually. And now, now that there are better cards available with Crucible of War and, you know, Monarch cards as well, Sigil's seeing a lot less play. And, I mean, it's amazing in Blitz, but in Classic Construction. And I think it's just because people want to make their decks more focused.
Yeah.
And Sigil doesn't really do that. It doesn't advance your game plan, you know?
Yeah.
It is what it says on the can. It's a generic
It's
instant.
3 life, right?
Yeah.
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 And that doesn't help if you want to discard 6+ attacks
Exactly.
or banish cards, you know?
Oh, I
like,
banished the sigil.
Yeah.
Not only do I not get to do what I want to do, I
You
just
also
lost
lose 3 life.
yeah, exactly, right? And it
Yeah.
just doesn't fit, you know? The opportunity cost of a card is a lot higher now than it was back in the day, you know?
Yeah.
it also doesn't buff your attack by 3, so it's not making it into warrior. And it also doesn't swing for 4 with go again, so I mean, no league deck.
Warrior is still one of the decks, I think, where it has a lot of potential.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
But I can see it falling out of favour in Bravo, just because the Bravo wants more sideboard cards for those really tricky matchups. You know, like, I think just as the game gets bigger, Sigil is going to have a smaller place in the game. But at the same time, it has a unique function that not many other cards can do, where I can see a very dedicated place for it in the future.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, like if there's a class that's focused on gaining life
Yeah.
or something like that, you know?
Yeah. No, for me, Sigil is and always will be one of the first cards that I put into a warrior deck. You know, 90% of the time.
Yeah.
There may come a time where it just doesn't fit anymore, where the meta shifts to be much more defensive or much more aggressive, and I can't sacrifice those card slots.
I think the reason Sigil is going to struggle in Warrior maybe in the future is not because the meta is going to be more defensive. Sigil is great in defensive decks that can be aggressive. So, like, that's why it's threatening the +3, but it's actually defensive. It's when the decks become more aggressive that Sigil is harder to play, I think. Because you want just more aggressive cards, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Sigil will always have a home in Blitz. Because
As long as Kano, exists,
as long as Kano is
in
good
Blitz,
and as long as Ira is
Sigil
good,
is in there.
you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sigil, you know, there have been
This
many
is
a time.
good.
Yeah, where Sigil is the thing that gets the kill on Wizards.
It's so good that
or-
you play the yellow one sometimes. You know?
I couldn't
I
do
think-
that for me.
I mean, when
if you
I
play
played in
hard
like
control,
Ira,
right?
that's
Yeah.
basically it. Maybe some into I played it from a dash control, like certain builds.
Yeah.
But it may be a KO list, but like a control KO list. But outside of that, it doesn't really. Yellow doesn't really make it into too many other lists.
It doesn't. Yeah, it's more niche.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
Red Sigil is just in
Yeah.
Blitz. It's,
Top of the top.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you draw it turn 1, you're like, yeah, I'll start this game on 23
Mhm.
life. Woohoo.
You draw both of them turn 1. You're like,
Yeah.
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 okay.
Cool.
The only instance where Sigil of Solace is a dead card is obviously, what is it, the Reaping Blade?
Yes, if
Yeah.
you're on higher life.
Yeah, that's the only time where Sigil of Solace, I see it in my hand and I just,
It does nothing.
makes
Yeah.
me sad. But in that case, it's always, you can pitch it away and come back to it if you're ever lower, or If you're really desperate, you just get rid of it. Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. So we had an exciting giveaway going on over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so not last week, the week before on our podcast, we announced that we were going to be giving away a mat.
Yep. And we have a winner, right?
We have a winner.
So just show off the beautiful mat.
So the mat is the limited edition, well, not limited edition because I keep printing it.
It's no longer limited edition.
Tunic mat, which is an amazing mat, and it was kindly donated by a Sushi Night. We do have a few others to give away, and we will be giving them away at some point. Further down the track, we'll probably be working out something with them and maybe other things, but we thought we'd give one of these away while we have one to give away. And
have you got the winner there, Nick?
I do. I just got to open it. So I chose this winner based on their comment. Their name is Wookie, capital K, capital X. They wanted to know, they found the news that we announced in that podcast pretty exciting, and they wanted to know how the medal was going to change over the period of time. And I felt like, they really enjoyed the podcast and wanted to actually understand the game a lot more.
Yeah.
And I thought, someone that's that keen on the game deserves something,
Yeah, definitely. So, we will message you.
Yeah, we'll message you and get your details and get this sent out to you.
Yep. So,
congratulations.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really, really lovely mat.
Yeah,
so
and the classic Sushi Night style as well. It is. I love seeing a Sushi Night mat because you know where it comes from, even without the branding. Yeah.
Really great design, and so in other news, we have started a new series as well. It's called Art of War Go Again, and it's very different to the podcast. The idea is that it's going to be a gameplay series, but instead of just playing the game, we want to show it more as like a testing kind of play. So the idea is that we play the games against each other, but we're not looking to like seriously beat the opponent or play it in such a way, but more as like a learning experience where sometimes we talk about we show what cards we have, we talk about the different lines, how best to play it, we go through the sideboarding, how we want to play the matchup, all that kind of things, and we're going to have multiple people on playing multiple different decks, and I think it's going to be a really cool way to up your gameplay. Yeah.
So keep an eye out for those, because those will be getting dropped like hot fire.
Yeah, going to have a few up. Featuring,
I don't know why is it that.
You saying there, Nick? Hot fire.
Sorry.
Yeah. It is Art of War Go Again. Hot fire.
Yeah.
So we've got a few with Liam and I playing. We'll have some up with Nick as well. Shortly.
We'll get Callum in there, and we'll get a few other people in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, and we will also have more deck techs coming along. So, if something interesting wins Armory, we'll get them to have a deck tech. We had my Liam and I chain one go up, which has been really successful. So we want to definitely do more of that stuff. So I think that's going to be really cool. So lots of stuff up and coming. Yeah. We'll have Callum joining the podcast shortly as well. So. Yeah.
Not too long now.
Very exciting news.
So there's lots
Mr.
going on.
Mr. Forrester will make his appearance.
Lots going on in Dice Jar Games studio at this point.
Well, Dunedin's the place to be for premier Flesh and Blood content.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Just
pretty awesome to be at the mecca of it right now. So.
I mean, the goal is to be the Flesh and Blood content, house. That's the plan. So make sure you follow, leave a comment.
Massive thanks to you, Rowan, for coming on.
Yeah, massive
thanks. It's great to have
absolutely.
You've been absolutely great.
Very informative. It's
Yeah.
good to actually get a female's perspective on the game. Not a lot of people,
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Is I've met some phenomenal women players of Flesh and Blood, and even more gender diverse players of Flesh and Blood. So it's great to see that kind of taking root in a new game as well, and being in it from the start. So to any new players as well who might be a bit intimidated getting into it, it's take it from someone who came into it thinking it was going to be intimidating as hell, lost every game I played for months, and has ended up on a Flesh and Blood podcast that, you know, losing isn't the end, it's only the start of a new journey.
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Like,
Yeah.
the person learns more from the 10 games they lose than the 10 games they win, right?
Yeah.
100%, right?
Because
Easily, every time.
obviously, if you're winning 10 games in a row, you're not versing someone that challenges mentally. If you're losing 10 games in a row, someone is smarter than you, and you know you can.
You have a
learn
lot
from
to
them.
Learn from them.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Should we end off?
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah. Thank you very much for watching Out of War.
Yeah.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks, guys.